Hey, vintage lovers. If you're looking for one-of-a-kind curated designer pieces that scream style and sophistication, then look no further than Funny Girl Vintage, your go-to destination for curated, high-quality vintage fashion that'll have you looking and feeling fabulous. At Funny Girl Vintage, they don't just find great pieces. They curate them with an eye for detail and a passion for unique designer finds. From iconic designer labels to timeless classics, their collection is like a treasure trove of vintage glam. Check out their website, funnygirlvintage.com, or stop by their showroom on Melrose Avenue and get one-on-one style consultation. And guess what? As a special treat for our podcast listeners, you get 10% off your first order when using the code NIGHT. That's right, just use code NIGHT at checkout and enjoy a sickening discount on your first purchase. We thank Funny Girl Vintage for sponsoring this episode.
Woo! All right, ladies. How are we? We've all had a crazy week.
We have.
What is everybody's thoughts on God?
Getting right into it.
I thought we were going to talk about the other topic and then go into God, but it's very funny to go God and then the other topic.
I agree.
I found God last night.
Really?
Yeah.
Do tell.
No.
That's okay. You can have a private relationship with God.
My relationship with God has been really interesting. It's something that I've kind of developed later on in life. I was raised atheist, and religion was never something that was discussed in my house. And as I got older, I always sought out some sort of connection and form of spirituality, but it was something that I had to really wholly do on my own, no pun intended, do on my own. Retrospective thoughts and memories come up where, like, I have always prayed. That's something that I've always done, is pray. And it's not something I ever really was comfortable talking about. But as I've gotten older and found friends and a community around faith, it is something that has become a part of my vernacular and comfort level in speaking about. Coalesces and is something that has come about really because of stand-up. One of our dear friends had someone really close to them pass, and they were a parental figure in a lot of our lives. It's someone that Izzie knew and Sarah knew, and we have Sarah in the studio audience here. Hey. And one of my last conversations with this person was about spirituality and was about talking to people. And this was before they passed, right? Very soon before they passed, about talking to them, talking to the people in your life who have passed on and knowing that they watch over you. And it was such a profound experience to have that person pass really soon after that. And they were such a proponent of me starting stand-up. I remember for the first time stepping on stage, and I felt this feeling wash over me that I can only connect to getting close to spirit, getting close to oneness. And I realized that this was something that I had a gift for. And since then, that's kind of snowballed into this relationship with God and finding my path and what that means. And I feel the closer I get to God, the closer I get to that true self. Mm. And to me, stand up and this relationship with God is kind of have worked together in a real parallel path. Just going back to what religion was growing up for me, somebody asked, how kids in school ask, what are you? What religion are you? And I was like, I couldn't have been, I was probably maybe in 3rd or 4th grade. And I said, I don't know. I don't know. So then I went home that day and I asked my dad, and my dad goes, we're nothing. We're atheists. And I go, well, what does that mean? And he goes, do you know what the Holocaust is? And I go, no. And he goes, okay, well, there was a guy, really bad guy, who used to throw babies into the furnaces. And I don't believe that there's a God that would be that. I don't believe in God because I don't believe that there's a higher power that would deem, everything happens for a reason, that there's some just meaning in that. And I go, well, that tracks. That that makes sense. And that was kind of the conclusion of the conversation of religion in my household. And it wasn't until later that I found my own meaning and understanding of spirit and connection to spirituality.
Yeah. I mean, I get that. I grew up with two parents who had Catholic trauma, Catholic upbringing.
They were both raised Catholic?
Both raised Catholic.
Wow.
I'm pretty sure. My dad, actually my dad, I think it was Jesuits.
Okay.
But both had grew up with a feeling about religion. And my mom was always very spiritual, so I grew up with that kind of perspective, very loose definition. My mom was very into the early 2000s spirituality, wellness culture, when it was very chic and everybody was eating raw and it was fabulous. I was
So cool
I was
back
around.
then.
Oh my God, it was the coolest thing ever. I remember being
cool.
a kid and being in those environments, in this melting pot room of all different races, religions, creeds, colors, and genders, and everyone is wearing the culture of somebody else, and everyone is very hungry because they haven't eaten in days, and everyone is chic, and there's house music. That was kind of I do miss that vibe. And I think in that environment too, it was always a non-denominational faith. When I was a kid, I went to Agape. Shout out to Agape, very famous, non-denominational church. I think it's non-denominational.
I think so.
But and then went to Lake Shrine in the Pacific Palisades, which is also it's an all religions
Agape
center.
is definitely the cool church.
Yes.
If you know, you know.
Yes, it's true. Yeah, and that very much makes sense for my mom and all that. But so my understanding of spirituality was this amalgam, melting pot of I knew all the Hindu deities, and I was raised on stories about morality from Native American culture and African culture. So I was kind of raised on this multifaceted spirituality of the world. And then with my dad, he was in various relationships where where I went to church a handful of times. Wow. And church was always very eerie to me, partially because my mom was really anti-organized religion. She had a very strong, clear thing about it. And I remember being at a church in the kids section one time, and there's a couple things. I got in trouble for talking about polytheism because I was talking about Greek mythology, and they were stop, enough of that. One God, Jesus. And I was my bad. But I remember overhearing a little girl talking to her mom, and she was Mommy, what's it called when two people have a baby but they're not married? And she said, that's called sin, sweetie. And I'll never forget that, because I was oh shit, I was created in sin, because my parents were never married. And that was my first experience of religious shame, or religious guilt. So I obviously followed in my mom's footsteps. My dad also, over time, my dad is basically a historian of all things African American culture, in everything from when we were taken to now. My dad is a historian. And similarly to your dad, my dad has grown to really loathe religion because of its hand in slavery and all these different atrocities throughout our history, which I completely understand. But as I've gotten older, I realized that I was kind of falling in their footsteps with everything, and I would just kind of say the words saying that all religion is evil and everything, and I used to feel I was missing the God gene or something, the thing that makes you believe, and I kind of wanted it. But in recent years, I've started to notice amongst young people what I think is this trend of, we were raised by parents who had religious trauma. So our traumatized parents imparted this idea that you either don't need God, and encouraged us to just go out on our own and do our own thing and not be oppressed by the things that were oppressive to them. But unfortunately, I think what started to happen is this spiritual homelessness. Mm-hmm. And I think it's spurred this kind of nihilism that I personally feel is really toxic. I feel a lot of people, it's this thing that people kind of laugh and joke about, nothing matters, fuck it. And
YOLO.
Yeah, and I've become Well, actually, it's not even YOLO.
Oh, it's
'cause
not YOLO.
Like,
No,
YOLO
you're right.
is like, there's
You only
still
live
some
once.
belief behind that of
Yeah.
like, seize the day.
Yeah.
This is more like, I resign myself because nothing matters.
Right.
And
Anti-YOLO.
I see anti-YOLO. It's like, it's
Nolo.
Nolo. Yeah. It's just like, whatever. We live, I guess. It's like, yeah. And I personally have started to move more and more towards a sense of belief. I also, in the last year, like I went through some dark shit last year and the year before that, where I found myself also kind of praying for the first time, like out of necessity, where I would just be like at my wit's end, just like, God, if you can hear me, I'm sorry, we ain't talked in a while, but like blah, 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 and like whatever, but like also fuck you, maybe, I don't know if you're there, like that kind of like feeling. And then I started to feel like I was receiving, not in a schizophrenic way, but I started feeling I was receiving the word in response because I would pray and feel like really, really lost and alone and scared. And then I would wake up the next day and I would see the light streaming through my window. And it was like some external force felt like it was telling me like, this is a gift and like, you need to be reminded of that. And it was like these subtle perspective shifts. And I'm sure someone would explain that away and rationalize and make that something else. But for me, that felt like clear evidence of the presence of God that I had not felt before. And now I feel like I've become, it's like I don't even want to say religious because I don't necessarily know what organized religion I subscribe to, but it's definitely almost gone beyond spirituality. It's gone beyond like the sort of like the palatable, like everyday, like, yeah, I believe in like the universe. Like I don't call it the universe anymore. I call it God because I feel like I've developed a relationship with something outside of myself and I think God is a very powerful word also. It's like a word that people are afraid to use.
Yeah.
Like I use it a lot in my writing and people are like, are you like a really religious person? And I'm like, no, I just feel like it's a powerful word and it deserves to be used. I think like if it feels meaningful to you, like it feels very powerful to me. So I use it. But I think, to put it simply, I think people need God really badly,
Belief.
Especially right now.
Oh, yeah.
I think it would be very healing for a lot of people if they could develop a relationship with God. But also I understand why that's so difficult because a lot of people
Have trauma.
Or they were raised by parents that were still in religious organizations who traumatized them with religion. Like, I totally get it.
Or they think you can't be intellectual and believe in God.
Yes.
There's a whole like sector of people who truly think like they over intellectualize the facts and like the Bible and like different religious texts. And like, this is not possible. Yeah. It's like, okay.
Yeah.
I think it was Albert Einstein, and watch me be completely wrong about this quote, but I think he said the more you look into science, the more you will believe in God or something like that. And that really sat with me. It
really is true. I mean, it's like, it's silly little things, like it's little things and it's big things, but it's like, you look at like the perfection of nature sometimes.
I was about to,
like the symmetry in nature and
I was
stuff.
literally going to say, go on a walk in a field and you will find God.
But like you look at certain things, like I remember like I cut open a watermelon last year and
Here we go.
I just said I'm not schizophrenic for believing in God. And then I'm about to be like, Jesus was speaking to me through a watermelon.
And we're like, so true.
And you're like, this just took like a hard turn of this episode. Everyone's perspective shifts dramatically of all of us. And then I opened up this watermelon.
And I saw Jesus'
and I was told
face.
that we needed to do a podcast. But I cut open this watermelon and there was these perfect it was funny. I remember I posted a photo of it on Instagram and I never post like food stuff or anything, but it was just so beautiful to me. And I got so many
God is in this room right now, guys.
I got so many responses about this fucking watermelon. But it was like beautiful. It had all these spirals in perfect symmetry, like in the pattern. I'd never seen anything like that before. And then like, I'm sure it's like in reality, it's like something about how the vine grew or some kind of fucking weevil burrowed inside of it and like ate through it.
But
and I'm
who
like,
did that?
Wow.
God.
Exactly.
God compelled the weasel.
Weevil. The weevil. Weevil, like a little bug.
Oh, I don't even know what that is.
It's actually, honestly, that's like such a hilarious like concept of like, especially in our modern world, the things that have made you feel the existence of God. Because I have a couple friends I feel like have been on a similar tip recently where they're like, I never felt the need. And now recently, as I'm getting older, like I feel like a need for like the presence of God or something outside of myself. And it's funny because I will hear stories where people have really stupid, like not to say stupid, but just like really like weird shit that has made them like, and now I know God. It's like I was standing and, I was in this dirty alley and it was full of trash and syringes, but the gasoline in the water just like reflected this beautiful light. And I was like, that's the face of God. And it's like, okay.
It's like, or you were on mushrooms.
Yeah.
Or you were on
or both.
Or
mushrooms taps you in.
Who created
in
mushrooms? Yeah. Mushrooms always like, especially like whenever I've taken mushrooms in a more heroic dose. Again, we're going Joe Rogan on this, but whenever I've taken mushrooms,
Rogan experience.
Yeah, in a more heroic dose, I do always have this conversation with myself. Like, is this ever present? Like,
and
is
we're just
this,
not.
Yeah. Or is this a moment where like I'm being communicated with? Like, it's a very interesting thing.
Do you
like,
feel like you have guardian angels around you, or do you feel the presence of people who have passed?
That's an interesting one. I mean, honestly, until very, very recently, I've not known many people that have passed that were close to me. My mom has always had a very interesting perspective on death, which I've realized recently. And it's given me a bit of a confusion around the subject because my mom has always looked at it as like the next adventure. Like there's always been this very like effortless kind of outlook on death in a very like almost like a childlike way sometimes. The way she thinks about it is like everything dies. Sad, but that's life. Like it is a bit. Which I've struggled with recently because I've realized I'm much more attached maybe to the physical realm. Because like, we still emulate our parents. I wanted to be like my mom in that way and would kind of parrot that. And then more recently I was like, oh, death is very kind of sad and scary. But in general, I don't know if it's that I felt guardian angels. I think it's always felt like a singular presence. Like if we're getting into like actual brass tacks, like details, it's always felt a bit like a singular presence, like a singular voice presence.
Interesting.
It's never really felt like an amalgam.
Mine has always felt like an amalgam.
Really?
Mine has always felt like I was really close with my grandmother. I have her tattooed on my arm. She was the relationship I had with her is beyond words. Like, oh my God, I'm gonna get emotional. Fuck.
Go for it. This episode, we're doing it.
Yeah.
Fuck. No, I'm not. I won't cry. Fahim would hate it. She'd be like, your makeup. My grandmother on my father's side was just the most fascinating, stoic, loving, doting woman I'd ever met. And we used to have sleepovers. She was my only bestie because I was obviously a very mentally ill child and
really
had
sweet.
difficulty making friends. And she had late stage dementia and was living alone during my, as we've discussed during the last episode, my tomfoolery and fuckery in high school.
The tomfoolery period.
Yeah, the tomfoolery period. And so I actually, I dramatically say I ran away from home, but really I just ran away to my grandmother's to live with her for like 6 months and take care of her while she was really declining and living alone and not, trying to cook breakfast all day and forgetting. And as she eventually moved into a home and stuff. So I had this bizarre pre-mourning period of her. And I felt as she was going, I felt like her spirit leaving and like becoming like a force around me. And after she passed, like I feel her everywhere. And when I got to Bali, it was so bizarre. Like I would smell her kitchen.
Whoa.
I'd smell the things she'd cook in her kitchen. And Bali was I did a 16-day solo trip. And my dad's words were, don't get sex trafficked. And I didn't. But I found God, which might have been worse for him. I don't know.
Didn't get sex trafficked? Found God.
Found God.
Sounds like a good time.
Yeah, it's a good time. Oh my God, Keida brought out the tissues. Is because is my makeup smudging?
No.
No.
You look
Oh,
fine.
okay.
Thank you.
Fahim would hate that. So now that I've gotten, older and more comfortable talking about it, I feel her everywhere. And I talk to her. And I've always felt like that guardian angel presence around me. And that is more, so when I talk about God, for me, it's more of a higher power and less it being like a universal white man in the sky with a beard. Because I do believe organized religion has been the cause of so much evil and death and destruction in the world. And there is a part of me that still believes that. And I think spirituality is a deeply personal, I think your relationship with spirituality is a deeply individual experience. And I struggle with the organized religion component of it because I think there's a lot of dogma within it and it forces people into a mold. And it does, to your point last week about the personal ownership and
responsibility.
Yeah, the responsibility and like the freedom of thought and action. That is also something I believe is quintessential as part of spirituality. You know, I think you have to make the decisions yourself, and how receptive you are to the universe or God or your guardian angels giving you the messages to guide you is kind of along the lines of what I believe in. I don't think that there's a guy in the sky with a grand plan and that you have to adhere to it. I think a lot of it is written in the stars already, and there are many paths that you can take, and your future is up to you, and your destiny can manifest in so many different ways. But how open you are and receptive you are to what the universe and the guidance that they're giving you will determine what the path looks like. It was weird too after my grandmother passed. Like, I've always been someone, and we were talking about this yesterday, like I'm not someone who can act. I go on stage and I do my act, but it is a part of me.
Yeah.
But
it's not a character.
It's not a character.
Yeah. I think that's very clear that it's not a character. It's like,
thank you.
It's you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I've always had such a difficulty hiding my emotions. And my grandmother she was in an arranged marriage with, my grandfather was a diplomat to the Shah of Iran, and they were an arranged marriage. And my grandmother was raised by this incredibly progressive guy who let her ski and do ballet and all these things in a predominantly Muslim culture that were not okay in the 70s, although Iran at that time obviously was a little bit more westernized pre the Shah falling. But still, I mean, it wasn't something that was commonplace. So she was this, very modern woman in a time that wasn't something that was, in a time and a place that wasn't something that was promoted. And so she had this level of strength and stoicism that was something I always never felt that I had. And then after she passed, I felt like it was something that was given to me from her. Because now I have this ability to keep my shit together. For lack of a better term, in situations where before I feel like I would crumble.
That's beautiful.
Yeah.
What a beautiful, like, parting gift.
A gift.
That's very, very interesting.
Shout out Fahim.
Shout out Fahim. What's your belief?
I believe in God deeply, and it's weird because
you ever seen him in a watermelon?
Actually, I saw 3 nuns at the park last week, and then I saw 2 sticks in a cross. So. In the same walk, even from a young age, my mom grew up without religion. I mean, culturally Jewish, but, her religion growing up was art. My dad grew up Protestant, but rejected it as soon as he turned 18. He moved across the country and, went to art school and became a hippie. And he's similar to both of your dads, it sounds like. But my dad's also very knowledgeable about the Bible. And
so is mine.
So knowledgeable that at one point he had a theory that Jesus was a woman. I loved that theory. We should hear more from him on that.
Yeah.
His mom, my grandmother, the grandmother I knew very well until she passed away 3 years ago. She, took the kids to church growing up, and then when she was in her, I would say 50s or 60s, she converted to Baha'i along with my uncle.
What is that?
Yeah, what is Baha'i?
Great question. Not sure if I can answer that too well.
Sarah, will you Google it?
Yeah, Sarah, give us from my understanding.
Do you know how to spell it?
Yeah, that's a good question.
There's an apostrophe in there.
I'm going to say
B apostrophe.
B-A-H-A-I
Okay.
apostrophe between the last 2 letters.
Sarah, for the dyslexics, bye, haha.
Baha'i.
Yeah.
Bye, Baha'i. That's how I always think of it. But my uncle and grandmother converted, and it's the newest of like the great world religions. It's considered one of them, I guess.
What I'm so curious
Do you have
about
do
what
we have a
makes,
definition?
Oh yeah.
It is a religion founded in the 19th century that teaches the essential worth of all religions and the unity of all people.
Yeah, it's a mixture. It's a mixture of the major religions.
Developed in Iran and parts of the Middle East. Jesse.
So we're like related.
Period. Yeah, so we're like related.
That sounds beautiful. I
Yeah.
love that.
Well, my grandmother, and it's very like they believe in God. Like some of the similar prayers to what you would find in, Christianity. And so my grandma would have pushed religion on me for years. And as a child, I always sought religion. I wanted my parents to be kind of religious because I just wanted something
wanted to fit
believe
in.
Yeah.
Yeah, true. But I also just wanted like belief. Like it
has
felt
come-
kind of empty.
especially as a child.
Yeah.
I think I had the same thing where it was like I felt like I would see people in church and engaging in that environment, and even as a kid, I recognized that it was providing some sense of peace that my parents didn't experience, and I was like,
Same.
why don't we have that? Can we
Yeah.
have that? And they were like, no.
Like, can we pray about it? My parents never. My mom would occasionally. She's dabbled with Buddhism, do the Nam Myoho Renge Kyo. Like,
Same, yeah.
My grandmother pushed Baha'i, really wanted me to become a Baha'i, and then I started to like pretend that I was had an interest in belief, kind of when we got closer in my early 20s, and then one day she had me sign what I thought was an email list for the Baha'is, where I was like, sure, like let them send me emails. But it was a declaration of my commitment to this religion. So I started getting all these phone calls and I would ignore them. And then finally I picked up and they were like, yeah, we haven't seen you at any of the meetings. Like they were under the impression that I had fully joined the religion. And I was like, Grandma, you can't bamboozle me like
Grandma.
Grandma.
that. But the ironic part is like, I'm not Baha'i, but she truly made me believe in God to a point that's like I don't even talk about with my parents because they'll think
Yeah.
I'm a religious fanatic because I pray all the time. I read
Isn't
her
it,
prayers.
isn't it kind of funny how like
So funny.
in our present culture, like there was definitely obviously the pendulum swings, but it's so interesting that like, 60 years ago, whatever, it was like seen as more morally bankrupt to not have a sense of belief, to not go to church, to not engage in like practices centering around morality. And now it's seen as the opposite. Like if you do engage in those things, like there's something, not to sound like one of those people who's like, there's religious persecution happening in this country, but like it is in a
Kind of
sense.
is.
I do feel like in a way, like belief in general. If I were to
Yes.
say, I don't think that any one religion in particular is under attack, but a belief that I would stand by is that belief is under attack. Like the
I agree.
idea of
aside from our parents' generation, but if we just look at ours and this nihilism that you were talking about, this is something that I've seen and I've experienced too. I think if you look at the events in the world that our generation has witnessed over the last 27 years, 28, 29, we have seen, there's that meme, can it stop being unprecedented times? That kind of sums up what we've all experienced, right? Our whole world has shifted and changed and ended and been scary more times than we can even count. I mean, if I think about my own experience, my 4th birthday was on 9/11. Right before that was SARS. There was chicken flu, bird flu, cow flu, COVID, Trump presidency, going back 2008 recession. I mean, we've all lived through these massive upheavals. And so I think it's only natural that our generation has gone, well, nothing matters. I mean, the world can change in a day. And I'm not saying that this is
But
right
that's
because
funny because historically we've got, I mean, if you look in the history of the world, like there's been some crazy shit
Yeah.
like this and people turn to
true.
religion instead.
yeah, that's what
Right.
And
I
that's
think,
why it's
I think that's the
ironic.
thing that's
I'm
the
not saying
most-
this is good.
Yeah, yeah.
I just
No,
think
I agree.
I think there are
You're so
there are
right.
You're right that it's been these crazy upheavals.
Yeah.
But it is true that it feels like something new now that people are,
the pendulum swings.
yeah, and that people are, after I think so many years, so many generations and iterations of life, human life on Earth and whatever, of people turning, shifting within their belief so that we're reaching this place where it's like plateaued and it's like no belief. And I do think that it's worrisome because, I don't believe in a punitive religion. Like, that's why, like, I don't subscribe to, like, a traditionally organized religion because, ultimately my view of God is, like, a very positive outlook. And it's interesting, too, because I feel like with all those things you just described, there's kind of two schools of thought. Either you see all those things happen and you say, and again, this is something like what you were saying with your dad said. It's similar to my dad's belief. It's like, why would I believe in God when all these horrible things would happen? But I think there's two schools of thought. Either you see those things and they disprove the existence of God, or you see those things and you understand a need for God, a need for belief. And I think maybe that's also where my belief in God differs from like organized religion, because I don't necessarily believe that God is the wizard pulling all these strings necessarily. I see it more as like a container surrounding this thing, and things are moving within this container. It's like, when they do those, people put like seeds in a jar and they close the jar and then it like grows this whole ecosystem and there's like, little bugs and fungus and all this kind of shit. Me, God is the jar.
Yeah.
Not necessarily any force within the bottle, but it's more like the container surrounding it.
Yeah.
And it's an important structure to remember that we have around us. But the other thing that worries me is that, and when I say morality, I don't mean morality like, in the sense
Good,
that we
bad.
think of like,
yeah.
But I think that I worry about the future of people's personal sense of morality as culture continues to sort of
if
devolve.
they're not reporting to,
because for me it's not
guided by something.
Yes, because it's
or
for me.
Scared of something.
I don't try to act with goodness out of a fear that I will go to hell.
No.
Yeah.
I try to act with goodness because I feel like it's something that's been reflected to me, like again through like my awareness of God. I'm like, wow, thank you for this gift. I feel very grateful. I would like to then shine that light on others. But it's not out of fear. It's never been out of fear of like what will happen if not. But I think I just hope that our culture, rather than abandoning belief completely, can find a way to have like a more casual sort of relationship to God. But you know what? I think it's also interesting too, because you said something earlier that sparked this thought about how like it says something also about people as individuals. And it kind of ties into what we talked about last week with Taylor Swift, because it's like there's a certain personality type that people they just want someone to drive the car for them. They surrender themselves to belief, whether it's politics, religion, fanaticism, whatever it is, where they surrender themselves to being like absolutely at the altar of this one thing, and they abandon like individual thought. And like that is, so I feel like we're entering a culture now where people have no sense of belief, so they're losing their sense of morality in like a basic human way. And then they're finding a sense of belief in everything else.
Yeah.
So other things, material things become belief. And because they don't have like a strong sense of self, they're becoming dogmatic in like swearing fealty to Taylor Swift.
Yeah.
Or to like whatever it is. And that's what scares me a little bit. And it shows also that I think people hunger for belief, because it's like you can't. When I look at that, I'm like, you can't tell me that you don't on some level crave the existence or presence of God or something, because you putting all of your faith into politics or whatever makes me think like you need God.
Absolutely.
Because then you see people being crushed, like brutally crushed when these like dare I say like false gods sort of like betray them in some capacity, and then they're so broken by it. And it's like, well, of course, you put your faith in a pop star. You put your faith in a politician.
Taylor Swift has a song called False God. I just want to let you guys know.
Other point, or our other topic. So then how do we explain the fanaticism of reality TV? We have three,
Izzie,
again.
you are playing God.
You're playing God. But this, again, so last week we debated
Someone's
Taylor.
playing God.
Someone's playing God. And his name is Andy Cohen.
Say it louder for the people in the back.
Last week
we
we
love
talked
you,
about...
Andy Cohen.
Period. Last week we talked about the Taylor Swift debate. This week we are going to debate reality TV.
I would say we're going to start a debate because I have a feeling we'll be coming back to this in future episodes.
We have, again, on the panel here, 3 varying sides of the opinion.
Yes.
Anti, pro,
Very pro.
moderate.
Not moderate. I'm pro. I've been watching reality since I was 10 years old.
This hoe, for the last week, we've been talking about doing this debate, and she goes, I'll be the moderate. Really now? Really?
Really? I've never said that.
You did.
I did?
You were going to be the moderate.
Okay, then I'll play the moderate.
And
No, it's fine.
No. It's
fine,
because
fine.
I don't watch as much reality TV anymore. Just because I truly,
Her actress is coming out this bitch.
yeah, she's fully lying.
Fully lying.
You want to hear some lies? I am moderate because I do think I got burnt out on reality. I watched like 3 seasons of Love Island, which is like 600 episodes collectively. And I think it just shut my brain off for a while. And now I can dabble in it. And like I have my certain shows, but I used to watch so much.
But you also
reality TV.
watch dramas.
Oh, yeah, I watch
I think we all
everything.
need to baseline before we get into this.
Of like
'cause
what our position is.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, also too, do we all agree that on some level reality TV is scripted?
Yeah, I've seen them.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
I have a note for this. When I was a freshman in high school, I had to take the bus sometimes home from school. And as the bus is like pulling up and stopping, I see this film crew at Bread Bar. And I see it's 2 of the girls from the Hills. And I'm like, I'll get off here and walk home. And I go into the cafe and I just sit there and I watch it. And it was Kristen and it was Lo sitting. Sarah's eyes just turned into like, they were having a conversation and periodically the producer would come up and give them notes and direct them. And that's when I knew it was all a facade. So I've known since I was, I don't know, I was probably 14, that it's very scripted.
I think it is the lowest form of scripted content because I think that film and television, when it's scripted, drama, comedy, whatever, has the ability to transform collective consciousness because it can touch on universal themes and you connect to innately human experiences. What reality TV does is display people and the baseline universal themes of jealousy, pettiness. It's very pedestrian in the themes that it's touching on. I also have a real issue with the level of how exploitative it can be. I mean, you are selecting people who the producers and casting people are looking for people that they know are going to make good television, usually mentally ill individuals who are put in high stress situations, who don't already have adept coping mechanisms. And we are all collectively, and the producers and television and audience itself, profiting off this exploitation of the mentally ill. And I think that it is the modern day version of the gladiators in the Colosseum, where we're all getting excited by watching suffering on some level.
I agree to a point with that. Like maybe something like 90 Day Fiancé, I feel like is very much that, where it's like,
I don't even watch reality TV, but wasn't that whole thing with that girl Leah on Love Island? She was treated really poorly in that show. Again, I didn't watch it, but this is
she
from
just
what
dealt
I asked.
with a fuckboy.
Yeah, she dealt with a fuckboy, but
Who hasn't?
But she also got off the show and was saying, I was so worried about what people's reaction was going to be because of because of the circumstances that went down, and
well, you also
everyone
don't know
rallied
what your
around
edit's
her.
going to be. That's
Right.
the truth.
So it's
at the end of the day,
manipulated.
no matter who you portray yourself as,
They're
someone else is
gonna
going to edit
paint
it.
a story. Yeah.
They have to. It's a narrative.
I agree with most of what you're saying, but in a totally different way. So I agree, it's extremely pedestrian, jealousy, pettiness, all these things. I personally find that these are things that within our society we don't typically like to showcase. And there's been a culture in the last few years where, especially with social media, people like to showcase a very manicured kind of vulnerability. So they'll post about they'll do a post of them like, I've had an anxiety disorder for many years and like blah, 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 blah. So there's this culture of people putting their best foot forward, presenting themselves in their best version while like saying this is how I used to be and like putting that in the rear view.
Because they're comfortable
What I
sharing
appreciate
that now.
about reality TV is that for me at least, it's like this anthropological thing where you get to see, yes, edited, but this pure, kind of unadulterated, very raw version of the worst elements of human behavior. I also think that it's a great litmus test for where we are as a culture at any given moment. I agree about the gladiators in the Colosseum. The Colosseum became very popular at the fall of Rome because everything was crumbling and it was a way to distract from the problems at hand. And that's exactly the moment I think we're in. Reality TV is the Colosseum, and politically and in the structure of our world, everything is shifting. We may be in some way at the fall of Rome as far as our current culture goes. Things are shifting and restructuring. And I love reality TV because I find that the people in my midst are not actually a great barometer for the temperature of the entire country. They are not. They are.
And you feel like
The people on reality TV, I do feel like that is the majority of people. I feel like the people I've grown up surrounded by, whose parents are directors and producers,
growing up in LA,
and growing up in LA, and everybody, went to a liberal arts college and is friends with some A-list. I watch reality TV. I feel like it's a glimpse inside the mind of everyone else. And I started out, I hated reality TV. And then I got into it because I started to feel, and at first when I started watching it was making fun, because I think that's the way a lot of people watch it, to make fun of these idiots. I don't watch it that way anymore. I actually think that a lot of the time, and also want to clarify, when I watch reality TV, like the game ones, I've never really been into like Real Housewives, any of that kind of stuff. Like I watched a little bit of Salt Lake City because you guys said it was going to be interesting.
That's the only reality TV I
that you
watched
liked.
because the stakes were so fucking high.
And it's very fascinating. I mean, for me, I think any criticism I have of like the brain rot of reality TV, I honestly, I will not argue when it comes to those shows. Like the capitalizing on people's like lived experiences, like these manufactured like dynamics where they're like, so what did Stacey say today? Stacey was like honestly being such a bitch. It truly is when I feel brain rot when I watch those things. There's nothing to like really learn or like observe from that, like anthropologically.
Yeah,
I'm like, but I also I think in part too is because like celebrity is not particularly interesting to me. So a lot of that stuff centers around like peeking inside the life of a certain type of person, which is not interesting to me.
But don't you think that all reality TV, there is a basis of voyeurism?
Oh, absolutely. I'm not saying.
Yeah.
Well, I'm not saying that. I'm not criticizing the voyeurism aspect. All I'm saying is, for me personally, I find that is a win. Like, obviously, it's all reality TV is like you're peeping in someone's window.
Yeah, but you're just not interested in the.
Speaking of reality TV, how do you feel about it?
Sarah's the one who introduced me to all of my reality TVs, and it's like your main form of entertainment.
Okay. Here's the first thing I will admit. I'm trash. I like to turn my brain off at the end of the day.
Yeah.
I don't like the fighting. I truly live for characters like Nene Leakes or like Kim Zolciak Bierman, where it's like, these people, like, you can't write this shit. I know the fights are scripted, but Kim Zolciak Bierman being like a white woman, like in Atlanta, like being like, yeah, I only wear wigs. Like that is truly like something I will never see in this life. Like,
it's true. It's true.
They just give me like so much joy. But
I get that too.
Sometimes fast forward the fights.
Also, the turning your brain off thing. I want to say that is also what it is for me. Is like I feel like I live in a glass prison of like non-consensual thought, just like constantly being bombarded with like my brain is like is a crazy whirlwind of like fucking like Bible verses and like fears of the end times, and then like
it's like Memento.
Yes, and it's like an MC Escher painting.
Yeah.
So it's like part of it is like there's something so comforting to me to sit there and watch
Idiots.
these people. I don't call them idiots, though. I'm sorry. I think that a lot of them are
when I say idiots, when I say idiots, though, I have to be very clear. It is the dating shows. It's the dating shows. I know those are the ones that you love. It's the dating shows I can't fucking stand because it's the lack of authenticity for me. I know you're going on The Bachelor because you want to become an influencer, and that's fine. But get on that show and tell me that you do not care about this guy with a traumatic brain injury, because I would rather you tell me I'm looking to walk away from this with my family hating me and 100,000 followers on Instagram. And I am in. I'm in. I will watch you devolve your life and I will root for you. I will create a fan club on Facebook for you. And I will get all the boomers on board for you. But that is the level of realism that I need versus I'm here to find love and I think Trevor's the one.
But
You
that's
just
the-
met Trevor.
But also that's the fun of it too for me is like, okay, so there's a lot of behind the scenes manipulation that you learn about. So the producers and everything, they're going out of their way
to manipulate.
No, because like, so Izzie's a contestant, right? And I'm a producer and I'm handling her. So Trevor, okay, the Bachelor, I'm going to her and I'm saying, I shouldn't tell you this, but I really think you guys would like really hit it off. Really? And I'm like inundating you with this idea. And that's where like, call it insidious, sure. But I had this moment once where I was watching it because I had this superiority where I was like, I'm smarter than all these women. And I realized, as somebody who has struggled with codependency and serious like hyperfixation on nothing burger type relationships, I would not be above it. If I had somebody that I viewed as like remotely intelligent, somebody of authority, like a producer or whoever, even like remotely feeding me this thing behind the scenes, I would succumb to it so quickly. Because I think that's what it is to me. It's like really an anthropological experiment. It's like, what happens in a vacuum? Because I think that a lot of people go on with that intention, but you watch people get high on their own supply. Like you watch people go in there, they get to a point where they thought they were going to play the game, and all of a sudden they're like you see these girls, they're like, I didn't expect to feel this way. And you're like, I know, girl, because you thought you were just going to get a brand deal.
Yeah.
And you now have deep feelings for this person because you've been put into this environment where the concept of love everlasting and commitment and marriage.
I guess I have too much compassion because I also put myself in that position and I go, I have too much, maybe it's because I have too much sympathy because I'm like, it makes me sad to see them broken like that. I don't get high or I don't enjoy seeing people, the fall and the disappointment.
They are also,
that's hard for me to watch.
I just want to add, the producers like sleep deprive them when they get to the house. They keep them up all night. No, it totally is, but
I'd rather see
but
that.
also the personal responsibility thing that we've been talking about from this episode to this one is also a thing.
Exactly.
Like, at this point especially, like you go back like to the origin of like The Bachelor, for example, those early days. First of all, very messy, kind of hilarious because it was just like brand new concept. You also get the sense that they like really genuinely like it started out as like it was like the eHarmony generation where people were genuinely like, this is a new way to meet people, like I'm gonna give it a go. But now it's absolutely a social media game, a career game. There's so many different aspects. That is absolutely the reason a lot of those people go on. I understand wanting the authenticity. I personally, again, back to the Colosseum, the games, we are at the end times. I know that there would be an argument, tear yourself away from the Colosseum, pay attention, whatever. I think I do a fair amount of paying attention. But I also enjoy sitting there having my popcorn and watching the gladiators. And in this case, this voluntary, experiment they go on. I like that there's this very human, very American drive behind it. I'm going to beat the game. And I'm going to win. I don't have a sense of glee watching people fall apart. Like, it's not what it is. One, I become very invested in the people. Like, I watch it like, I really go full NPC mode.
You were crying over Love Island
I was crying over Love Island. I was. Because I get very deeply invested. I mean, Love Island was very interesting. This USA, this last season was fascinating because it was like no reality TV I've ever seen before. There was no infighting between the women. Any argument they had over the men, the women would always say to the other women, which is better than me, they would say, this is not about you. He went. Like, you didn't steal him. He went to you. Like, all the women were for each other. The men were crying over each other's pain. Like, the men were so bonded. It was like watching like a positive outcome of Lord of the Flies. Like I literally, when it was towards the end, I was like, keep them on this island. They might need to repopulate under these terms. Like, I don't know what this is, but you've created like a utopian paradise of like what people should be. It was like, and of course, as soon as they left and went back to the real world, it devolved spectacularly. But I thought it was so fascinating that they like, and there was this one girl on it, Liv, and there's a lot of controversy around her. But this girl didn't know what the word vagabond meant. And she was clearly had some intellectual hang-ups when it came to like certain basic information. She clearly was not super educated in certain basic information.
Brain rot.
But this girl was the most emotionally intelligent person I have ever seen on TV. She'd be trying to have a conversation with somebody about like something very basic, like things that most people would know. I don't know, gravity. And she'd just be like, I don't know, it's like none of my business. And then she would sit there with her friend and be like, you are worthy. And I see you crumbling and you're collapsing into yourself and you deserve so much more. And I don't want to see this from you because you're making excuses. Like, and not just in that typical, like, you are great. It was like, she really like got in there and I'd be listening to her and I was like, this is amazing. And the women were sobbing. When she got sent home, more so
their
than
therapist is leaving.
more so when they got broken up with by their guys, they were weeping. And you would think that she was being sent off on an ice float to die because it was like they were beside themselves. And
You
I
get voted
bought
off
in.
Love Island and
It
you
was
get
the
sent to
most I've
Guantanamo
ever.
Bay.
It was the most I've ever bought in. And I will say, so that was like a specific type of reality TV. But to your point about the fakeness and like the exploitive nature, a perfect example of that is Love is Blind, which I find to be a really fascinating show because there is, for me, I will say, a little bit of a sense of justice gratification with that one because you watch people go into it. I think that show, people seem more or less authentic. Like you watch the people on that show and you're like, you really want to find love. Like there's really a strong undercurrent of you just like genuinely feeling like this is your shot.
I agree.
Which is interesting, admirable. But you watch people put their best foot forward, but they can't help themselves because another interesting part of it is these reality TV shows that don't have crews, but it's all hidden cameras, they forget. And they're
I was gonna
drinking.
bring that up.
They forget that they're on camera.
Still
So you
exploitative.
see these guys, for example, like it's often the men, women too, but you see these guys like give two different stories to two different women. And you can see that they're like, and then they're going into their normal like arsenal of behavior. And it's like this total lack of awareness that there's gonna be a tape that will be revealed. But it's like, no, I didn't say that. I didn't say that. And you're like watching this person, and you're like, that is so crazy to me. But it's because I truly think like I think it's fascinating. You get to watch that low, petty, jealous, crazy behavior that is not often showcased. Or if it is showcased, it's like in a cinematic way, you know, where it like, and I think it's very, I find it very relatable and human. And that is what I really appreciate about it.
Yeah, it's not
of life.
manicured.
That is not what I grew up around in LA.
Yeah. See, and for me, I think I get that out of watching MMA and watching grown men beat the shit out of each other.
It's my
To the
nightmare.
point of like,
Yeah,
I hate
it
like
does
the
nothing for
blood
me.
sport of it. I think because I'm in my 20s and I hate men right now. So like watching them,
Not all men.
Not all men.
I enjoy watching them.
Izzie and I are so like
We're pro men.
we're
Yeah,
so pro
yeah.
men.
I mean,
I
maybe
think honestly, it's really funny. Like just on that topic, I
Yeah.
feel like of the three of us, it's like typically like you have the most amazing like serves, like just digs at men, and Izzie and I are always like, not all of them.
Yeah.
Huh?
we love them.
Yeah, no, some of them are cool, I guess. It remains to be seen. My dad's a good guy, I guess, when he's not texting
That's
me.
one.
When he's not pitching me bits about carpet munching. But I get that like when I watch MMA, like watching grown men beat the shit out of each other to like a physical pulp, like that is something that is so outside of what I see every day. Like you're not
Yeah.
seeing street fights.
And to me, that shit, I have the reaction that you have of reality TV, where it actually really like
Upsets you.
it upsets me on like a visceral level.
Yeah.
I want to throw up.
and also
see that.
and also I think I can understand your perspective of reality TV because for me I have that response of like this is fake, like why are you even doing this? Why are you even doing this?
Yeah.
It generates that same feeling for
Yeah.
me.
Yeah.
And
That's
I'm like, this is
interesting.
unnecessary and it's fake. It's literally gladiators in
Yeah.
the Coliseum. And
Yeah.
I'm like,
Well,
yeah.
we're being distracted from the real matters at hand.
But at least this takes discipline. Like
Yeah.
MMA takes discipline. It takes hard work. It's a level of athleticism and commitment. Like, you know, they're having to, you know, make weight. They're having to train every day. They're having to get into a ring and like fight for their lives. Like it's a level of high stakes and
I
like
can't do the ears.
oh yeah, it's
cauliflower ear.
disgusting. But it's like, but at the same time, I'm like, let's fucking go. Like I want to see
Yeah, I can
blood.
see you living for that.
Like I love it.
Can I just make a comment? Reality TV really took off when the writers' strike happened in 2007 because no one could hire writers. So they're like, what can we make without writers? Shows that aren't written.
yeah.
They may be produced and manipulated, but
Yeah.
and that just completely propelled reality TV to
Yeah.
what it is now. I mean, if you think about the timeline 2007 to now, a
And
world
even
of
that though, it's
difference.
to me like I get and it's like I'm sure someone would argue that there's like a level of cruelty to this, but like the manipulation in itself is fascinating to me because it almost feels like an art form because you're taking human interaction and you're painting a story without like you're not like making a movie, you're constructing a movie
harder.
from pieces.
It's actually harder.
And I find that very fascinating. You know, people will be like, I got a bad edit. You know, like that's a thing now.
Oh yeah.
I'm not a bitch. I just got a bad edit.
Me
I'm gonna
on
start
this
using that.
podcast?
Yeah, me too. I'm gonna start saying that.
Meanwhile, I'm the one editing it. Like, you're like,
I am not a religious
Our fucking
zealot, and
producer.
I am not a reality TV apologist. I just got a bad edit.
yeah, I just got a bad edit.
I did not see Jesus in a watermelon. I got a bad edit. Yeah.
But it's funny that you say that reality TV shows you a snippet into a world that you are not exposed to, because I think now with things like TikTok, we are exposed to like the lack of manicured, tailored, curated, like that idea of like messy and unpolished content is now kind of resurfacing on that form of platform, which brings me to our Sedona update from episode 1. I have now been sending Alana inundations of updates on Sedona Prince. To recap, Sedona Prince is a D1 TCU.
Thought you were gonna say demon.
That too. A TCU athlete who is currently suing the NCAA for
Do that.
yeah, for payment, like for not paying their athletes enough. They've loosened the restrictions now where D1 and NCAA athletes can get sponsorship deals, but they aren't paid for the work and play at the school. And so she's now part of this lawsuit suing the NCAA about that. And they did
Now
this
she's
whole
Robin Hood.
yeah, now she's Robin Hood. She's the 6'7" ginger Robin Hood. But so she came out with an apology that I sent you.
Oh, the one where she's looking down at the script constantly.
Me.
Yeah, an apology.
Honestly, I was
Yeah.
like,
Honestly, me. I'd have
Me.
to write it in advance.
Apologizing to all of the women that
All her
she's
exes.
abused.
it was very clearly something that was created with a legal team.
Yeah,
Because
a PR team.
That's
yeah.
the thing. I think that's also something very interesting about like culturally is like when people make apologies now, like there's the expectation, right, of an apology video. Like you have to apologize. And then a lot of the time when it's something that does involve like a potential crime, like things like sexual assault, people are always like dissatisfied with the apology. They're like, that wasn't really an apology. It's like, do you understand that they can't apologize?
Yeah,
Yeah.
They will
cannot
get,
apologize.
They'll get charged.
Yeah, like a lot of the time, it's like you're not the
You're
lack of
admitting to
awareness
a
that
crime.
there is a legal team behind this person, because that's always the thing. It's almost like it's like coming directly from the person, and it's like no, that was advised. Like that person was like they were like, do you want a career? Do not say the words "I'm" and "sorry" together in a sentence. You can say it a million different ways.
So many ways.
I apologize for the way my actions may have been construed in the context of previous dynamics with people I may or may not have been involved with. But honestly, I am learning and growing every day, and I want to become a better person. And I need to honestly reflect on the ways that like I have allowed my past traumas to affect my current reality.
We're gonna use that when
And-
we get canceled.
Yeah,
We're gonna
a couple videos of her where she was standing for scale near a doorway, and I was like, that is so scary. That is scary. If I wasn't already afraid, given the harrowing stories of her exes and the abuse allegations of, if I got screamed at by a woman
Of that size.
who
Anyone of that
stands in the
size.
doorway with like her arms on the, I was like,
Tall people are really scary.
I agree.
I know
sorry.
I'm tall, but I'm not that
yeah.
tall. Like,
I'm heightest in the other way.
yeah,
I am not.
you are. You've been claiming this for years. You
I
are.
do not like very tall. Very, very tall.
I'm kind of agnostic. I used to really like tall guys, and now I'm like okay with them being like 5'11".
5'11's the perfect height for a man.
Yeah.
I would just like to say.
Or smaller. I don't care.
6 foot's.
I really don't care about height at all.
No, me either.
Because also sometimes like shorter guys are really funny.
Yeah.
They're
Yeah,
very funny.
usually
the
they're
smaller they are,
way more
also
interesting and
a lot of
funny.
time if they go under 5 foot, if they go under 5'8", they start to become like demonic. Karl Lagerfeld had that quote about a short man. It's really funny.
What, he'll like try to
He'll try to
your
destroy
life?
you.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's like, beware of a short man. He'll try to destroy you. It's this really crazy Karl Lagerfeld quote.
Put the quote up on the screen.
Yeah.
Okay.
When we're editing it.
That wraps us for episode 3. That was, again, a deeper episode with some short laughs.
We promise this is a comedy podcast.
We promise this is
with some short laughs.
we assure you.
We assure you this is a comedy podcast where we also dive below the surface.
Yeah.
Next week, we will likely be only doing an audio episode because the girls will be on the 9/11 Tart trip to Palm Springs, sponsored by Funny Girl Vintage. And we are so excited. So we won't be recording next week, but we will likely do an audio-only episode. So, schoolies. We're going to start doing, I'm letting you guys know this. This is the girls don't know this. If you leave a 5-star review, we're going to have our star students, which during our ad reads, we're going to shout out the people who do 5 stars.
I like that.
There will also be a launch party happening soon that we're planning in Los Angeles. So stay tuned for that. We have a lot of exciting stuff coming up, potentially a Patreon that we'll be releasing, which will be completely unedited and will likely ruin my life. The response has been so amazing to this. I forgot to tell you, but Payson actually reached out to me and said, "Hi, Alana." He watched the clip and he said, you make doing this job worth it. So the response has just been so overwhelming.
God.
It has.
Kidding me?
We have had really amazing
It's been
responses.
really amazing. If you feel compelled, if you like our stuff, please spread the word. Share it on Instagram. Follow us on Apple Podcasts. Follow us on Spotify. Like, comment, subscribe. Write a 5-star review. We will shout you out.
Break no contact by sending your ex our podcast.
Precisely.
It's the perfect way to break no contact.
It's produced by Keida and Mascaro. We're so grateful for all of you guys and all of your support. We love you guys, and we'll see you next week.